Woke Supremacy News.
As former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama returned for the ceremonial unveiling of their official portraits, painted by artists Robert McCurdy and Sharon Sprung. Remember those names. President Joe Biden hosted his former boss, their infamous bromance on full display. This was the first portrait unveiling in more than 10 years after the decades-long tradition was shunned by the previous administration. But perhaps that pettiness was actually for the good, as this moment of levity is something I think we all needed. It wasn't all fun and laughs, though. The two also got in some subtle but pointed lines on the current state of affairs.
They have faith in our democracy and the American people. The country's better off than when you took office, and we should all be deeply grateful for that.
Traditions like this matter, not just for those of us who hold these positions, but for everyone participating in and watching our democracy. You see, the people, they make their voices heard with their vote. We hold an inauguration to ensure a peaceful transition of power.
It was also an historic moment, as the Obamas will be the first Black family to have their portraits hung in the White House. Michelle spoke on that significance as well.
We're looking at today a portrait of a biracial kid with an unusual name and the daughter of a water pump operator and a stay-at-home mom. What we are seeing is a reminder that there's a place for everyone in this country. Because as Barack said, if the two of us can end up on the walls of the most famous address in the world, then again, it is so important for every young kid who is doubting themselves to believe that they can too.
Joining me now is David Plouffe, MSNBC political analyst and a former White House senior advisor. And David, it is so rare that I get to invite you on to talk about something that can make us smile. So I'm really glad that you were available today. I got so many texts today of people who were feeling the Obama-Biden nostalgia. It was literally the greatest buddy act, I think, in the history of politics, but also seeing Barack Obama and Michelle Obama together and even the Jill Biden making President Biden get up and clap by himself. It was really great. What were your thoughts about today?
Yeah, well, it was a great moment, a historical moment. I think that the Obamas and all the staff clearly were having a great time in the East Room, a lot of laughs, but also some pointed and important messages about the state of our democracy. So, I think you mentioned, Joy, that maybe it was best that this waited, and I think you're right. I think this would have been incredibly awkward, to be generous, in the last administration. So this was a celebration, not just of the Obamas, certainly that was part of it, but everything that was accomplished in his administration. And it was great that he also, I think, talked about the difference Joe Biden's made as president. So yes, it's nice to be able to smile in the midst of all the carnage that the Republicans are wreaking across the country.
The thing about it is, David, is that, we've gotten so out of touch with the things that were traditional, right? I mean, it's not unusual for a vice president to follow the president into office. Eisenhower, his vice president was Richard Nixon, right? Richard Nixon eventually becomes president. George Herbert Walker Bush was vice president to Ronald Reagan. Like, there are all of these things that sort of fit into the traditions. Obviously, the Obamas were a huge change in tradition because Barack Obama's a Black guy, so that was different. His name is different. But the thing that struck me today is how much they fit in to the overall traditions of the American Republic, the idea of the peaceful transfer of power, the idea that there is this congeniality in politics. I feel like Trump has so disrupted that and has introduced so much violence into just the narrative of American politics, not just January 6th, but his whole political vibe is violent. That I feel like we've lost that. Do you worry that we've lost it permanently and that today was a nice day, but not the way politics is going to ever be again?
Well, I think that's the existential question, Joy. This next election in 22 and then the big election in 24 will determine whether Trump was just a 4-year aberration, and then obviously a few years after that where we were sorely tested, or whether the entire thing falls apart. So you're right. I mean, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama obviously broke the race barrier. My son just turned 18, which is why I had to stay in California. And I'm reminded when he was very little, he had a placemat of all the presidents. And obviously they all were of a certain gender and race. And there's Barack Obama, like the age of 3. He's like, wow. But I think that, yeah, you saw in the Obamas the love of this country, of our institutions, of the rule of law. Michelle Obama talked, when your time is done, you move on. And we often would talk about that in the White House, that this was just a relay race and you had the baton for your time, whether that's 4 or 8 years, and you pass it on. Whether you like the person you're passing it on to or not, you pass it on. And I think, for the most part, historically, and what I've always struck, Joy, when I talk to people who worked in prior administrations, the reverence that they hold for that building, for the institution, and that sense of history. So we were reminded of that today, that I think the Obamas obviously are unique in their story. They have some unique rhetorical gifts, but they're not unique in the history span about their faithfulness to the Constitution. And I think that's the question. And even if Trump doesn't run, if somebody else runs who believes what he does, and the election is illegitimately provided to someone who didn't get votes, I think the country's over as we know it. So we are definitely on a knife's edge still. So yes, today was a nice moment, but it really was just an interruption in this sort of historical battle that's going on for whether America is going to remain a democracy or not.
Absolutely. Let me just throw some statistics out there for folks. Joe Biden is not unusual in terms of where he stands with the American people. He's at 44% approval. That's better than Donald Trump. It's exactly what Barack Obama was where he was at. But the idea that 54% of Republicans believe America will be less of a democracy than it is now. 56% of Democrats believe the same thing. And that 64% of Americans believe that political violence is going to increase in this country tells me that we are looking down the barrel of something truly terrifying, that we will look back on the Obama and Biden presidencies as the end of something, and the Trump presidency as the beginning of something, and something terrible. I worry about that a lot. Do you?
Unless, Joy, we put an end to it. So that's the challenge, which is the Trump presidency and the few years after it can be this time in American history where with leaders of a party, too many of them anyway, and a lot of their supporters were okay with America becoming an autocracy. We can stop that. There's well north of 50%, well north of 60%. I would argue even well north of 70% of people. I wish it was 100. It's not. Who'd like us to remain a democracy? Who believe the candidate who gets the most votes should win the election, who believes we should have peaceful transfers of power. So that's basically the challenge now is whether you're an independent, a Democrat, or Republican. You can defeat those who are election deniers, who defeat those who basically want to turn America into an autocracy. Then once that is safe, we can go back into our corners and fight about how many people should have health care and what the tax rate should be.
100%. My problem isn't the 70%. I agree with you at 70%. My problem is a handful of judges, including 6 on the Supreme Court, and a handful of judges out there like Cannon, like this Judge Cannon, and a handful of really way out there politicians, way out there in la-la land. But we will talk about that another day. David Plouffe, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much for being here.